Good morning, it's July 1st, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Yesterday, one of the people commenting suggested that I was reading what I was saying, and he's absolutely right. I do script these out. I script them out because I use a lot of quotes and a lot of facts, and I want to make sure I get them correctly. So, yes, I do script them out, and I try to time them out to be about 5 minutes. Anyway, on to today. Budget scoring in Washington, D.C. is something that normal accounting would never understand or tolerate. Because the U.S. government operates on a 10-year budget cycle, it gets very complicated. Then you factor in the rules of the Senate and you find all kinds of different analysis being applied, and depending on which side of the issue you fall, you either agree or disagree on how it's being done. The last major tax bill passed by the Congress was done in 2017. It was done under what is called reconciliation, which is a budgetary maneuver that the majority party uses to avoid the problem of the minority party filibustering the bill. And that brings us to today, and the Republicans control Congress, so they have to pass a new tax bill since the one passed in 2017 will expire at the end of this year. If they fail to pass a bill, then taxes will increase for just about everyone, because the 2017 bill was basically a 10% across the board cut. And to be exact, even Democrats want to extend all of the tax cuts with the exception of the reduction for the top rate from 39 to 37%. And I've long argued the Republicans should have left the top rate alone, since it only affects taxable income for a married couple over $751,600. That's not a lot of people. It only increases their tax burden a little over 2% on income over that level. But Democrats have used that cut to say it was a tax cut for the wealthy, but even the Washington Post and New York Times, no friends of Trump and Republicans in general, finally had to admit that the middle class got a pretty good tax cut. And that's where we are. We get this complicated scoring process at the Congressional Budget Office. They're scoring the current bill as increasing the federal deficit by $3.3 trillion over the next 10 years. But it's only true if you assume that Congress was going to tolerate a $4.5 trillion tax increase. That would be the result of the 2017 tax reform expiring at the end of this year, as most individual tax provisions are scheduled to do. Congress was never going to allow that. Even Democrats, as I mentioned, support extending most of the 17 individual cuts except the lower 37 for the top marginal rate. Senate Republicans correctly argue that the bill's cost should be measured against a more realistic baseline, which assumes that existing tax rates and policy continue. And you would think that any change to the law would be scored against current policy, not was in existence in 2017. But the CBO is making the assumption that all these cuts will expire, and so extending them, according to their analysis, would cause a $3.3 trillion increase in the debt. Now, if you were to base the scoring on current policy, which Republicans are arguing should be the case, the CBO estimates the Senate bill would save $500 billion over the 10-year budget cycle. Spending reductions would offset increased costs for the carve-outs that Trump urged to be inserted for no tax on overtime, tips, and being able to once again deduct auto loan interest. Now, I disagree with those items as tax policy, but they don't add up to $3.3 trillion. And they're still debating the final number of the SALT deduction, but it appears it will be set at $40,000 as an appeasement to high state tax Republicans. It will cost about $140 billion over 10 years, but the way the law is currently written, that cap will disappear after this year. Only in Washington, D.C. accounting can a bigger tax subsidy reduce the deficit. And by the way, even Barack Obama argued that Congress in 2012 should use a current policy baseline to extend most of the George W. Bush tax rates that were set to expire at the end of that year. The Senate bill, for all its faults, is the first serious attempt at reforming some of the entitlement programs, and that's in over 20 years. It will slow the growth of Medicaid, food stamps, and student loans. It gets very serious by rolling back subsidies that basically become entitlements for the renewable energy industries. Democrats don't like that because those entitlements flow to their supporters. By eliminating the tax credit for electric vehicles, those vehicles are being purchased by upper income people more than middle class and lower income people. It's giving away a subsidy that the liberals have gotten used to. Elon Musk was a hero to Democrats until he buddied up to Donald Trump, and then he and his Tesla company became villains. It's interesting now that the bromance between the two has ended, if suddenly Musk goes back into favor with liberals. Now, all this number crunching sounds like numbing gobbledygook, but it demonstrates how complicated and how distorted accounting and budget policy can be in Washington, D.C. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.